Mr. Godussi has had everyone's panties in an absolute twist, even more so than Mesmer's 17-inch impaling spear. And there has been so many questions that were left unanswered about Godwyn's origins, what actually happened once the death root took root, and just what on earth he's been doing in the millennia since the Shattering. For make no mistake, we get a lot of information about his followers, but Godwyn himself, we don't get much. The theory we're going to talk about is honestly, in my opinion, very plausible, and I hope you all enjoy as well, because it's something that I've wanted to talk about for quite a while. Before we go any further, if and only if you do enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel and it lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. Without any further dilly-daddling, please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender and sensational prawns and cats if you want, and of course, enjoy. What we see inside of Elden Ring of Godwyn is not really Godwyn. Now, of course, the body is, but what's actually controlling it is definitely not Godwyn. After the Night of the Black Knives, his soul was destroyed. That is told to us time and time again, and yet we're not exactly told what events transpire after the Night of the Black Knives, in regards to his transformation and the factions that form around his corpse. But by taking into consideration certain clues, we can piece together the true story of Godwyn. And first of all, we need to start with the clip we see in the story cinematic where it shows us him being killed. I've always thought it a bit strange. You know, when you look at him and he's dying, what in the bloody hell is that thing that's crawling beneath his eyelids? It's never told to us exactly what that is, but when he opens his eyes, black goop comes out, which is the same sort of colour pattern we see from the Deathroot. And considering this event led to the inception of Deathroot, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that this is Deathroot. But even if we go with the idea that this is Deathroot, which I definitely believe it is, what on earth was that thing crawling beneath his eyelids? And I believe the answer is quite simple. I believe it is some sort of parasitic organism. When I was re-watching the clip of it happening, it really reminded me of, you know, when you see those videos of certain animals and humans getting parasitic worms stuck in their eyes. It looks really similar to that. Further proof that this is the case is his shaman heritage. Now, Marika is a shaman, and when she has children, no doubt that gene is going to be passed on. So Godwyn and a lot of other demigods have this sort of shaman ability. Godric when he welds the dragon on and his whole grafting thing. Rykard becoming the god-devouring serpent by fusing. I think the exact same sort of thing happened with Godwyn. Upon his soul's death, I believe his body fused with something else. Some parasitic organism. And that is what we see in this little clip. It also seems a double whammy fusion actually happened, for if you look at Godwyn's body where it is in the deep root depths, you'll actually see it's fused to the great tree that he's sitting next to. He has quite literally become one with the tree, which is further proof of this shaman heritage coming into play. Non-biting flies can spread eggs and cysts of parasites through touch of humans and animal skin. What do we see when we go inside of Godwyn's room in his little abode? We see piles and piles. We see a whole army of flies swarming around his corpse. And like the thing crawling beneath his eyes, we're never told why. But when you take into consideration that flies are one of the main spreaders of parasites, I think this makes a lot more sense. If the parasite, which is Deathroot, which resides in Godwyn, can be spread through touch, then this further makes sense as Godwyn is touching the roots of a great tree. Now we see inside of catacombs Deathroot popping up all around. It's not much of a stretch to say the reason this is because Godwyn is in direct sync with the roots. The direct touch makes so much sense and it really fits together everything really nicely. The flies touch Godwyn through his skin and then those flies go and spread it to other organisms. Or alternatively, Godwyn can just touch the roots and then they can transcend in a way. We see the parasite of Godwyn's face pop up everywhere when we see Deathroot things. I mean, one of the biggest examples that I love is the crabs, who have Godwyn's face inscribed on the back. The interesting thing about these crabs is they're eating from the soil which is directly above where Godwyn is located in the deep root depths. Now this also plays into fungal parasites, which we're going to talk about later in the video, so stay tuned. The death root is a parasite that the Lands Between doesn't know what to do with because they don't fully understand it, and it's been allowed to run rampant throughout the Lands Between and the Lands of Shadow. The fact it's in the Lands of Shadow really, really interests me. The fact it's there suggests to me that the roots between the Great Tree and the ones inside of the Shadow of the Erd Tree, aka the Lands of Shadow, are somehow connected, which makes a lot of sense considering the Lands of Shadow was once a part of the Lands Between. What doesn't make sense though is the fact the Lands of Shadow is already sealed away. So the fact that Godwyn has so much power, or at least the parasite controlling him has so much power, to go and actually reach across time and space and break through a seal is absolutely mind-boggling. And a little description we get at the Suppressing Tower further proves that this is true. It says about how all manner of death washes up in the centre of the Lands Between before it is suppressed. Considering the suppressing pillar is inside the Lands of Shadow, I think it's quite fair to say this talk of all manner of death washes up in the Lands Between is in fact talking about the Lands of Shadow. A lot of people took this as a definitive fact, but I have a little idea. What if this is just a rumour that is sprouted around based on not enough information, and that ultimately it is actually Godwyn and his ability to reach across the veil? This makes perfect sense considering we also see 3 of his little heads pop up in the Lands of Shadow. I'd been stumped for a while on just why on earth these heads were here, but when you take into consideration these parasites, and the fact that they need to be in contact with something to sort of bring about this parasitic form and help spread the disease, and the fact that Godwyn was able to spread so much through the Lands Between by in contact with the roots, I think it's pretty logical to say that they want to do the same thing inside the Lands of Shadow. Now, why they couldn't have just gone about through the roots like they did to get there, I don't know. I feel like the most likely answer is part of the way there is decayed, for if you look at the Skadu tree, you'll see that it's basically on death's door. It's sprouting out its yellow goop, and genuinely looks like it's about to keel over at any moment. And am I growing crazy, or does the little shadowy bit on Deathroot not look really similar to the stuff we see coming off the Skadu tree? Am I going crazy? Let me know down below, because I think it looks really uncanny. Some parasites do what we call mind control. The whole purpose of this is to, in multiple different ways, try and increase the chance of reproduction. Things like hairworms, toxoplasma and Gondi are all great examples of mind controlling parasitic organisms. For the whole video I've been talking about it as if it's just parasites, but I truly believe that the thing affecting Godwyn is in fact a fungal parasite. If you've ever played Last of Us, the main protagonist in that is the cordyceps, which is a type of parasitic fungus which is used to take control of the mind and leads to these fungus protrusions you see all over the clickers. I really do believe that it is a mixture between the parasitic stuff we talked about earlier in the video and a parasitic fungus. I think the parasitic fungus that it is actually taking inspiration from is Mucormycosis. I cannot pronounce it because my pronunciation sucks major monkey balls. But the name will be on screen. This was put in a Reddit post a long time ago, and it stuck with me because it's such an amazing theory. That Reddit post is also on the screen right now and is in the description because the person who thought of it deserves to get all the recognition. It is also known as black fungus. Sound a bit familiar? Well, this next bit is going to sound even more familiar, for certain bits of ulcers and blisters from it, when infected, may turn black. There's also a symptom of little black liquid coming out of your eye. It also includes tissue death, which makes a lot of sense when you're considering a lot of those who live in death which are infected by Deathroot, their skin has completely been torn off, or at least bits and pieces are torn off. For example, the Death Knights inside the Lands of Shadow, all the skin off their face is gone, and when you see the skeletons inside the Lands Between, and of course the Lands of Shadow, their skin is also gone, their flesh is gone, and all that remains is bones. Taking this even further with 2 more points, if you look at Godwyn's eyes, you'll see that they are swollen. This is another symptom of black fungus. In our world, it is spread by spores of mould, of the order Muraculose, most often through inhalation, contaminated food, or contamination of open wounds. These fungi are common in soils decomposing organic matter, such as rotting fruit and vegetables, and animal manure. The crabs which are located directly above Godwyn are eating from the soil. It's no wonder then that this would lead to the contamination and transformation of these crabs. This also further proves the idea that black fungus was in fact a big inspiration for Deathroot and Godwyn. To me, it seems like a bit too much of a coincidence that when Godwyn got stabbed and subsequently killed is when this fungal parasite came about. Considering one of the ways to get what we've just been talking about is through contamination of a wound, I think this is most likely what happened. Now, there's another point that comes about this. Is it the wound and then something crawling in that caused this? Or was it the knife that was used, aka Destined Death, which did? Information on Destined Death is far and few between, but we know a fragment of the Rune of Death was used in the knives of the Knight of the Black Knives. Now they are also black. What if it is something intrinsically part of Destined Death and the Rune of Death which subsequently led to this sort of fungal parasite taking bloom inside of Godwyn? This brings up so many questions, and honestly, I know a lot of people have said it, and I'm going to say it again. I wish there was more stuff about Godwyn inside the DLC. I understand he had his whole quest, and I understand that there was a lot of information given, and a lot of time was actually put into his story. But it genuinely feels like there's more questions than answers when it comes to Godwyn. I feel like a broken record saying this because so many people have already said this, but some Godwyn information inside the DLC would have been so good. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel, and it lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. How did you all find the video? I am really curious to see what you all have to say. Constructive criticism is always welcome. I don't normally say this, but the channel does have a Discord link. If you want to go view it or you want to come join, then it's in the pinned comment and in the description. I'm not going to dilly-dally any longer. Please friends, don't you dare go hollow, and may you find your worth in the waking world. See you in the next one, and goodbye.